Christmas is no place for losers. Mom, those were his words. My son, the boy I raised alone, the man who had just shut the door in my face while his wife smiled from behind him like it was the best show of the year. Loser. That word just hung in the frozen December air like a curse. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just nodded calmly. I turned around and walked back to my car. But as I drove home, something inside me changed. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that cuts like glass. That same night, sitting in front of my laptop, I cancelled the mortgage payment for their house. I cancelled their car insurance. I cancelled every automatic transfer that had been holding up their perfect life for years. 5 minutes. That's all it took to dismantle the house of cards they called their success. And now he's losing his mind. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are watching from now and what time it is there. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's shout out goes to Joshua Aina from Los Angeles. Thank you for being part of this great family. Now, let me tell you what happened that day because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to all the mothers who have been judged, despised, and forgotten by the children they raised. It all started 5 years ago. Brian had just married Jennifer. She was beautiful, ambitious, with that kind of smile that shines in photos but fades the moment the cameras are gone. They came to my apartment one spring afternoon. I was excited. I thought it was a social visit. I thought they were finally including me in their new life. But it wasn't a visit. It was a negotiation. Mom, we need your help. Brian said. Jennifer wants a house. A real house with a yard with 2 floors in the good neighborhood. But the bank needs a cosigner. It's just some paperwork, just your signature. You won't have to pay anything. It's just for security. Jennifer touched my hand. Her nails were perfect. Coral-colored, long, expensive. Mom Victoria, you know how important it is for us to start off right. A family needs stability. Your future grandkids need a home. Future grandkids. Those words were the perfect bait. I pictured a house full of laughter. Christmases together. Sunday pancakes. Me being the grandma who bakes cookies and tells stories. I signed. I signed without reading the fine print. I signed because I trusted, because he was my son, because love doesn't read contracts. 6 months later, they came back. This time, it was the car, a black SUV, sleek. It cost $45,000. We need you to make a down payment. Mom, just $8,000. We'll pay you back in 6 months. I promise. I took the money from my savings. Those savings I had scraped together cleaning houses, ironing other people's clothes, working double shifts when my bones were already begging for rest. $8,000. I handed it over with a smile. Because that's what mothers do. We give. We always give. The 6 months turned into a year. The year turned into never. Then came the emergencies. Small at first. Mom, the water heater broke. It's $1,200. Mom, Jennifer needs dental work. It's $2,000. Mom, the kids need school clothes. It's $500. And I paid. I always paid because every time I hesitated, Brian would say something like, "Don't you trust me? Don't you want your grandkids to have the best? I thought you were different, Mom. I thought you supported us." Guilt. That was their favorite instrument. They played me perfectly. And I sounded exactly the way they wanted. But it wasn't just the money. It was everything else. The calls that only came when they needed something. The invitations that never arrived. The birthdays where I wasn't welcome because Jennifer had invited her elegant friends and I didn't fit into their world of champagne flutes and designer dresses. I wore the same grey dress I'd had for 10 years, the same one I wore to Brian's wedding. The same one Jennifer looked at with disdain that one time and muttered something about charity and thrift stores. But I kept quiet because that's what I had learned. In my family, kindness was the invisible leash, and I wore it thinking it was a string of pearls. The visits became less frequent, then non-existent. They only called me for money or to babysit the kids when they had better plans. I was the free nanny, the emergency credit card, the convenient solution. I was never invited to dinner. I was never part of the family photos they posted on social media. I existed only in the margins, in the shadows, in the bank receipts. And still, I kept paying. I kept smiling. I kept saying yes. Until that December afternoon, I arrived with gifts, with wine, with hope. I had bought toys for my grandkids, an expensive perfume for Jennifer, a silk tie for Brian. I spent over $300. Money I didn't have, but it was Christmas, and Christmas was for family. I rang the doorbell. The snow was falling softly. Everything looked perfect, like a postcard. Brian opened the door, but he didn't smile. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I wasn't the woman who spent 30 hours in labor bringing him into the world, like I wasn't the one who skipped meals so he could eat, like I was nothing. Behind him, the house was glowing. Golden lights, a huge tree decorated with silver ornaments and elegant garlands, the smell of roasting turkey, laughter, soft music. It was the kind of scene you see in movies, the perfect family, the perfect Christmas. But I wasn't in that movie. Jennifer appeared behind Brian. She was wearing a wine-colored dress, elegant, expensive, probably bought with the money I had sent last month for the kids' supposed piano lessons. She looked me up and down. Her eyes stopped on my old coat, on my worn-out shoes, on the gift bag I was carrying with so much enthusiasm, and she smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile you give someone who is about to receive bad news. "Brian," I said, "Merry Christmas, sweetie. I brought gifts for everyone. I thought we could have dinner together." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me. And in that silence, I heard everything I didn't want to hear. I heard years of contempt, of indifference, of being used. "Mom," he started. His voice was cold, controlled. "I don't think it's a good idea for you to come in." The words hit me like invisible fists. "I'm sorry." Jennifer moved closer. She placed her hand on Brian's shoulder. A territorial gesture. Possessive. "Victoria," she said. She used my name. Not Mom. Not mother-in-law. Just my name. Like I was an employee who showed up on the wrong day. "We have important guests today," she continued. "People from Brian's office, his boss, clients. It's a business dinner. You understand? It's not really a family gathering." I looked at Brian, waiting for him to say something. To defend me, to say that I was his mother and I had a right to be there, but he just looked away. "Coward. What about the kids?" I asked. My voice was trembling, but I tried to keep it steady. "At least let me give them their gifts. They're my grandchildren." Jennifer sighed like I was a problem she had to solve with patience. "The kids are busy. Besides, they already have too many toys. They don't need more." She took the bag from my hands. She opened it, looked at the contents. I saw her expression change. Contempt. "These plastic toys, Victoria. We buy quality things for our children. This is, well, it's a bit cheap." Cheap. That word stuck in my chest like a rusty knife. Brian finally spoke. And when he did, he destroyed what little was left of my heart. "Mom, look, it's not personal. But Christmas is no place for losers. Tonight is important for us, for our future. We can't we can't give the wrong impression. Losers." I repeated the word like it was poison in my mouth. He shrugged. "You know what I mean. You live in that small apartment. You work cleaning houses. You're not. Well, you're not successful. And the people coming today, they're important. They have standards." Jennifer nodded. "It's just for tonight, Victoria. I'm sure you understand. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. You'd be out of place. Out of place in the house I helped buy with the money I had sent, eating the food I probably paid for without knowing it." I looked at my son. I searched his eyes for something. A glimmer of the boy who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. But there was nothing, just coldness, just shame. Ashamed of me, of the woman who sacrificed everything so he could have a better life. Then Jennifer whispered, moving to close the door. "Maybe it's just better if you spend Christmas at your place alone. It's more appropriate for someone in your situation." And before I could answer, the door closed slowly, softly, like closing the lid on a coffin. I just stood there in the cold with the bag of gifts still in my hands. The snow fell on my head, on my shoulders, on my broken heart. I could hear the laughter inside, the clinking of glasses, the festive music. Life was going on. I just wasn't part of it anymore. I walked to my car. Each step felt like it was made of lead. I opened the door, sat down. I left the gifts on the passenger seat. And for a moment, I just sat there breathing, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't cry. Not yet. I started the engine. I drove in silence. The streets were decorated with Christmas lights. Families walked hand in hand. Children laughed. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere except me. I got to my apartment. I climbed the stairs, opened the door, turned on the light, and there it was. My life, small, modest, lonely. I took off my coat. I made myself some tea. I sat by the window. And finally, the tears came. Silent, bitter, hot. I cried for the daughter I was, for the mother I wanted to be, for the grandmother they never let me be. But most of all, I cried for the fool I had become, the fool who believed love could be bought with sacrifice. The fool who thought that giving and giving and giving would eventually earn me a place in their lives. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, remembering, connecting the dots. And with every memory, the clarity grew like the sunrise after the darkest night. Slow but inevitable. I remembered the first time Brian asked me for money after he got married. $200 for an emergency. He never told me what the emergency was. And I never asked. I remembered when he stopped calling me Mom and started calling me Victoria. Like the title was too intimate, too compromising. I remembered all the times Jennifer made comments about my clothes, my hair, my way of speaking, always disguised as concern, always poisoned with contempt. I remembered the forgotten birthdays, the unreturned calls, the broken promises, and I remembered the money. So much money, thousands and thousands of dollars that left my hands and went into theirs like water slipping through my fingers. Invisible, but constant. The mortgage I paid in secret when they fell behind. The $600 a month I sent like it was my duty. The car insurance, the house repairs, the kids' classes, everything. And then I understood I wasn't his son. I was his bank. I wasn't his mother. I was his resource. And resources are used. They are exploited. They are discarded when they're no longer useful. That realization didn't come like a scream. It came like a whisper. Cold, clear, true. I got up from the chair. I walked to my desk. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the darkness of my apartment. I logged into my bank account. And there it was, the complete list of my own financial slavery. Automatic transfer to Brian Mendoza. $600 every month for 5 years. $36,000. Shared mortgage payment. $450 every month because I was the co-signer. And when they didn't pay in full, the bank charged me. Car insurance. $120 monthly. Family dental plan. $80. And the list went on like an endless drain. I moved the cursor. I let it hover over the cancel button. And I took a deep breath. There was no anger. There was no revenge. There was only peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop bleeding. I clicked cancel. The word appeared on the screen like a final judgment. Are you sure you want to cancel this automatic transfer? Yes. Cancel. Another click. Another cancellation. And another. And another. Each click sounded like a door closing. But this time, I wasn't the one being left out. This time I was the one closing the door from the inside, from my side, from my peace. Automatic transfer to Brian Mendoza. Cancelled. Shared mortgage payment cancelled. Car insurance in the name of Brian Mendoza and Jennifer Reyes. Cancelled. Family dental plan cancelled. Gym membership that Jennifer insisted was for her mental health cancelled. One by one, methodically. No rush, no anger. Just the precision of a surgeon finally removing a tumor that had been growing for years. It took me exactly 5 minutes to dismantle 5 years of exploitation. When I finished, I closed the laptop. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The city was asleep outside. The snow was still falling. And for the first time in years, I felt something strange in my chest. Something I had forgotten. Lightness. Like I had been carrying rocks in my pockets and had finally let them fall. Like I had been breathing underwater and had finally broken the surface. I didn't regret it. Not for a second. I made another cup of tea. I sat by the window and I waited. I didn't wait for their call. I didn't wait for their apology. I just waited for the sunrise because I knew that when that sun came up, I would be different. I would be free. Christmas passed alone. I ate a simple soup. I watched an old movie on television. I went to bed early. And I slept better than I had in months. Because there were no expectations to meet, no calls to wait for, no disappointments to swallow. There was only silence. And silence, I discovered, can be the most beautiful sound in the world. The next few days were strangely calm. New Year's came and went. I toasted alone with a glass of juice. I laughed at how absurd it all was. And I made myself a promise. This year would not be the year of giving. It would be the year of living. January brought the cold. And with the cold came the bills. Those bills that I used to pay without them knowing. Those bills that would now land directly in their mailbox, in their hands, in their reality. The mortgage was first. $300 extra that I covered every month because they always came up short. The bank doesn't forgive. The bank doesn't listen to excuses. The bank only sees numbers. And when the numbers don't add up, the bank acts. Then the car. The insurance expired. And without insurance, there's no legal car. No way for Brian to drive that sleek black SUV to work. No way for Jennifer to go to her lunches with friends, showing off her perfect life. Then the little things, the gym, the dental plan, the streaming subscription. I paid for and they enjoyed everything gone like smoke. And I did nothing but live my life. I went to the market. I bought food for myself, not for someone else's emergencies. I paid my own bills, not someone else's. I bought myself a book, one I had wanted to read for years, but never had the money for because I was always sending that money somewhere else. I sat on my little couch and read page after page. No interruptions, no calls asking for favors, no guilt eating at my stomach. It was peace, simple, silent, mine. But I knew that peace wouldn't last because bills don't forgive and reality eventually knocks on the door. It always does. It was a Tuesday, mid-January, 14 days after I cancelled everything. My phone rang. Brian's number. I watched it vibrate on the table. I didn't answer. It rang again and again and again. I let it ring. Every ring was music to my ears because it meant there were finally consequences. Gravity was finally doing its job. Then came the messages. Dozens of them, one after another, like a desperate river looking for an outlet. Mom, where are you? Call me. It's urgent. Another message. Mom, I need to talk to you. It's important. Another one. Why aren't you answering? Are you okay? The concern was fake. I knew it. It wasn't concern for me. It was concern for their situation, for their comfort, for their castle that was starting to crumble. I didn't reply. I deleted the messages without reading them completely because it wasn't my problem anymore. It was no longer my responsibility to hold up their world while they destroyed mine. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. It was night time. I was reading my book, calm. The doorbell rang, insistent, desperate. I looked through the peephole. It was Brian. He had dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled. He looked tired, worried, almost human, almost. Mom, I know you're in there. Please, I need to talk to you. His voice came through the door. I need you to help me. It's an emergency. Emergency. That word he had used so many times to open my wallet. That magic word that turned my money into his. But this time it didn't work. I stayed on the other side of the door. Silent, invisible, free. Mom, please. The bank called me. They say the mortgage is late. That if I don't pay this week, they're going to start foreclosure proceedings. I don't understand what happened. You always paid your part. Your part. As if the house was mine, too. As if I lived there. As if I enjoyed those walls that shut me out. I need $5,000 now this week. Or we lose the house. Do you hear me? We're going to lose the house. His voice was rising. Panic, real, raw. And I was still silent, breathing softly, feeling every word bounce off the door and fall to the floor. Words that no longer reached me, that no longer hurt me. Jennifer and the kids will have nowhere to go. Is that what you want? For your grandkids to be on the street? Manipulation, the last resort, using the kids as a shield, like always. But I remembered. I remembered Jennifer telling me the toys I brought were cheap. I remembered they didn't even let me see them on Christmas. I remembered that those grandkids were a convenient excuse, not a reality I could touch. Mom, open the damn door. His voice changed. It wasn't pleading anymore. It was demanding. As if he still had a right over me, as if he could still order me around. He pounded on the door hard. I know you're in there. I saw the light. Open up now. I didn't open it. I got up from the couch, turned off the light, walked to my bedroom, closed the door. I lay down in my bed and I listened as he kept pounding, yelling, demanding. Eventually, he got tired. Eventually, he left and I fell asleep deeply. No nightmares. The following days were a symphony of desperation. Calls, texts, emails, even messages from Jennifer. Victoria, we need to talk like adults. This is ridiculous. Brian told me you two had a misunderstanding. But you can't punish the whole family for it. Misunderstanding. They called telling me I was a loser. A misunderstanding. Closing the door on me. Treating me like trash. Another message from Jennifer. The kids miss you. They're asking for you. That's a lie, isn't it? Because if they missed me, you would have let me see them on Christmas. If they asked for me, you would have called me. Another one. Look, I know things were said, but you have to understand Brian was stressed. He didn't mean it. Come over. Let's talk. Let's fix this. Fix this. As if it was something I broke. As if it was my responsibility to glue the pieces of their perfect life back together. I didn't answer. Not a single one. Because I had finally learned something. I had learned that silence is power. That saying no without saying a word is the cruelest revenge. That ceasing to be indispensable is the sweetest freedom. I went on with my life. Small, quiet, mine. And as they sank in their own mess, I flourished in my silence. Like a plant finally getting sun after years in the shadows. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of absolute silence on my part. 3 weeks of chaos on theirs. And I knew it. Even if I didn't answer, even if I didn't open the door, even if I deleted every message without reading it, I knew their world was falling apart. Because I had been the invisible glue holding it together. And without glue, everything falls. One afternoon in February, while I was drinking coffee in my small kitchen, I heard voices outside my building. Familiar voices, arguing, shouting. I peeked through the window. It was Brian and Jennifer in the middle of the street fighting. He was gesturing wildly. She was crying, but it wasn't sad crying. It was angry crying, frustrated crying. The kind of crying that happens when things don't go your way. Your mother is ruining us. Jennifer yelled. You have to do something. Talk to her. Beg her. I don't care. But we need that money. You think I haven't tried? Brian shot back. She doesn't answer. She doesn't open the door. It's like she disappeared. Then go to her job. Find her there. Wait for her outside. I don't know. Do something because I am not losing my house over your stupid pride. My pride. Jennifer. You were the one who said not to let her in on Christmas. And you were the one who called her a loser. So, we both screwed up. But now we need to fix it. I watched them from above. Like a distant god watching mortals without interfering, without compassion, just watching. Jennifer wiped her tears. Her makeup was smeared. She didn't look elegant anymore. She looked desperate. The bank gave us until Friday. If we don't pay $8,000, they start the foreclosure. $8,000. Brian, Where are we going to get it? I don't know. My salary barely covers our expenses. You spent the entire year-end bonus on that trip to Cancun. That was for our anniversary to save our relationship. Our relationship won't matter if we don't have a roof over our heads, Jennifer. They looked at each other with hatred. The kind of hatred that's born when two people realize they've built their life on sand. And the tide finally came in. Then ask your mother. Literally crawl if you have to, because I'm not going back to living in a small apartment. Not after everything we've achieved, everything we've achieved. As if it had been their effort, as if my money hadn't been the foundation for every single inch of that success. Eventually, they left, got into their car, that car that no longer had insurance. That car they technically couldn't drive legally, and they drove off. I went back to my coffee, cold by now, but I didn't care. I drank it anyway because even cold coffee tasted like victory. That night I received an email from Jennifer. Long, desperate, filled with words that tried to sound sincere but reeked of lies. Dear Victoria, I know things between us haven't been perfect. And I recognize that maybe we haven't valued you as we should, but we're family. And families forgive. Families help each other. The kids ask about you every day. They cry. They say they want grandma. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to explain why you don't come around anymore. We need you. Not just financially. We need you here with us. Please come home. Let's talk. Let's fix this like adults. With love, Jennifer. I read every word, every carefully constructed lie, every manipulation disguised as affection. And I deleted the email without replying, without hesitating, because I had learned to read between the lines. And between those lines, there was only one truth. We need you financially. The rest was just decoration. Friday came, the bank's deadline. I didn't do anything special. I went to the market, bought fresh vegetables, freshly baked bread, a small bouquet of flowers for my table. Simple things, things that made me happy. As I was walking home, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Something told me I should. Victoria Mendoza. It was a professional voice. Formal. Yes, this is she. This is Patrice from City Central Bank. I'm calling regarding the property at 422 Maple Drive. You are listed as a co-borrower and co-signer on the mortgage. My heart sped up. Yes, I know. I'm informing you that the primary holders, Mr. Brian Mendoza and Mrs. Jennifer Reyes, have failed to make this month's payment. According to the contract, as the co-signer, you are responsible for covering the debt in case of default. The amount due is $8,300. Do you wish to make the payment? I took a deep breath. This was the final decision, the last chance to go back. To be the mother I always was, the one who rescues, the one who saves, the one who sacrifices. But it was also the chance to be something new, something I had never been. Free. No, I said. My voice was firm, clear. I will not be making the payment. There was a silence on the other end. I understand. Then I must inform you that this will affect your credit score. The foreclosure process will begin next week. I understand. I accept the consequences. Are you sure? This is a serious decision. I am completely sure. Very well. We will send you the corresponding documentation. Have a good day. She hung up and I stood there in the middle of the street with my grocery bags, with my flowers, with my freedom. And I smiled because I had finally done something I never thought I could do. I said no. And the world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. I just kept walking home. That night, I cooked for myself. A real meal with time with love. I put on soft music, lit a candle, served myself on my best plate, and I ate alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt complete. The next day, Saturday, I received an unexpected visit. A knock at my door. Early, I opened it without looking. Mistake. It was Brian, but not the arrogant Brian from Christmas. This Brian was broken. Red eyes, unshaven, wrinkled clothes. He smelled of desperation. Mom, he whispered. Please, I need to talk to you. I tried to close the door, but he put his foot in the way. Not with violence, with pleading. Please. Just 5 minutes. I'm begging you. Something in his voice stopped me. It wasn't the voice of the man who called me a loser. It was the voice of the boy I once held. Then, and only then, I let him in. He entered like an invader in a strange land, looking around my small apartment as if seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he had never paid attention before. He sat on my couch, buried his face in his hands, and he wept. It wasn't manipulative crying. It was real crying. Broken. Desperate. We lost everything, he said through his sobs. The house, the car. Jennifer left me. She took the kids to her mother's house. She says I'm a failure. That I can't provide for my family. That this is all my fault. He raised his head. He looked at me with pleading eyes. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for everything, but please help me. I need money for an apartment to start over, to get my family back. I sat across from him, calm, watching him like you watch a wounded animal with pity, but without the urge to rescue. How much do you need? I asked. 10,000, maybe 15, for the deposit and first month for basic furniture to show Jennifer I can fix this. $15,000, almost half of everything I had left in savings. Everything I had managed to save after years of giving them everything. No, I said simple, direct. He blinked as if he hadn't heard me right. What? I'm not giving you any money, Brian. His expression changed. Confusion, then anger. How can you say that? I'm your son. Your only son. Exactly. You're my son. Not my owner. Not my purpose. Not my reason for emptying my life. But I need you. And I needed you on Christmas. I needed you when I was 64 years old and I showed up with gifts and hope. But you told me I was a loser. That I wasn't worthy of being in your house. That was a mistake. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. A mistake. I held on to that word. A mistake that cost me years of dignity. A mistake that showed me exactly what I was to you. A walking ATM, Mom, please. No. You're going to leave me on the street. You left me on the street first. Only my street was emotional and it hurt more. He stood up shaking with rage. You're selfish. A bitter old woman. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but it will be my regret. Not yours. He stormed out, slamming the door. And I stayed there, sitting on my couch, feeling the echo of his words. Selfish. Bitter. Maybe he was right. But if being selfish meant loving myself for the first time in decades, then I would be selfish. And if being bitter meant not letting them use me anymore, then I would be bitter because I had finally understood something. True love doesn't empty you. It fills you up. And what I had with my son wasn't love. It was a transaction. And transactions end when one party stops paying. I had stopped paying. The days after that visit were strange. I didn't feel guilty as I expected. I didn't wake up at night thinking I had been cruel. I didn't regret closing the door on him because I had finally understood something fundamental. Saying no didn't make me a bad mother. It made me a human being. And human beings have limits. February turned into March. The snow melted slowly. The streets filled with that grey slush that lingers when winter is gone. But spring hasn't quite arrived. I continued with my routine. Work, market, reading, peace. But something was changing. Not outside. Inside, I looked in the mirror and saw someone different, calmer, firmer, like I had taken off a costume I'd been wearing for decades. The costume of the perfect mother, the savior, the one who always says yes. Now I was just Victoria. No last names, no titles, no obligations I didn't choose. One afternoon while cleaning Mrs. Castellano's house, my oldest client, she offered me tea. We sat in her sun-filled kitchen. She was 80 years old, a widow, 3 children who visited her every single Sunday without fail. You look different, Victoria, she said. Lighter, like you left something heavy somewhere. I smiled. Something like that. Family troubles. I nodded. I didn't say more, but she understood. She had that wisdom that only comes with years. Let me tell you something, she said. When my children were young, I also gave everything. My time, my money, my life. I thought that was love. But one day, my husband told me something that changed everything. He said, love that empties you isn't love. It's sacrifice. And sacrifice only works when it's mutual. Her words settled in my chest. And what did you do? I learned to say no. I learned that being a good mother doesn't mean being a martyr. And you know what happened? My children respected me more because I finally had something they couldn't take. My dignity. I drank my tea in silence. Processing healing. You did the right thing, Victoria. Whatever you did the right thing. I left that house with something new in my chest. Validation, not from my son, not from Jennifer, from someone who had walked the same path and survived, had flourished. That night, I got a message, but not from Brian. It was from Jennifer. Victoria, I need to talk to you. It's about the kids. It's urgent. Please answer the kids. Always the kids, the perfect shield, the infallible excuse. But this time, I answered, not for her. Out of curiosity, what happened? Thank you for answering. Look, I know things are bad between us, but the kids are suffering. They don't understand why we lost the house, why Dad doesn't live with us anymore, why everything changed, and they ask about you. They say they want to see Grandma. I read the message 3 times looking for the manipulation, and I found it in every word. If the kids are asking for me, you can give them my address. They can come over whenever they want. But you and Brian are not welcome. There was a long pause. Then the reply came. That's cruel. They're little kids. They can't come alone. Then they're not asking for me as much as you say. This is absurd. You're just a bitter old woman. Maybe, but I'm a bitter old woman with money in the bank. Can you say the same? There were no more replies. I blocked the number because I had understood something else. The kids were real. Their love probably, too. But they were being used as a tool, as leverage. And I wasn't going to be moved by that leverage. If one day those children truly needed me, I would be there. But I wasn't going to support an entire dysfunctional family just to have access to my grandchildren. That wasn't love. It was blackmail. March moved on. One day while walking in the park near my apartment, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. It was Brian sitting on a bench alone, staring into space. He looked terrible, thinner, older, like he had aged 10 years in 2 months. Part of me wanted to go over to ask if he was okay to offer help because motherly instincts don't turn off like a switch. They're still there murmuring, pushing, but I didn't move. I stayed behind a tree watching like a stranger watching a stranger. Then I saw something else. A woman approached. Not Jennifer. Another woman, older, elegant, perfectly coiffed grey hair. She sat next to him. They talked. Brian gesticulated, explained. The woman nodded. She looked serious. Then she took out an envelope. She gave it to him. Brian opened it. I saw his expression change. Surprise, relief. I couldn't be sure from this distance. The woman got up, patted him on the shoulder, left. Brian stayed there staring at the envelope. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw something in his face. Not gratitude, not joy, something darker, calculation. I left before he could see me. With questions, with doubts, but also with confirmation. My son was looking for another Victoria, another ATM, because he hadn't learned a thing. He hadn't changed at all. He was just looking for his next source. I couldn't sleep that night. Not out of guilt, out of curiosity. Who was that woman? What was in that envelope? Why did I still care? 2 days later, the answer came. A knock on my door. I opened it. It was a woman. The same one from the park. Victoria Mendoza. She asked. Yes. My name is Marianne. I'm your son's neighbor. Well, ex-neighbor. Back when he still had a house. I let her in. Wary, confused. She sat down, refused the tea I offered, got straight to the point. I need to tell you something. Something your son doesn't want you to know. My stomach tightened. Go on. For the last year, I've seen things. I lived in the house next door. Thin walls, close windows. You hear things. You see things. What kind of things? Jennifer has a problem. A shopping problem. Compulsive. I've seen the deliveries every day. Boxes, bags, packages from expensive stores, clothes, shoes, purses, things she never even uses. She just buys. That's not my business, I said, even though I felt like it was. There's more. Marianne took a deep breath. Brian told me you were helping them financially, that you sent money every month, money that was supposedly for the kids, for their needs. I nodded. $600 a month. She shook her head. The kids went to public school. They wore normal clothes. They ate well, but not extravagantly. That money wasn't going to them. Where was it going then? Jennifer has 3 credit cards in her name, all maxed out. $40,000 in debt. Brian didn't know until the bank rejected their application to refinance the mortgage. That's when he found out. $40,000. The number hung in the air like toxic smoke. When he confronted her, she blamed him. Said if he made more money, she wouldn't have to resort to shopping to feel better. That it was her way of coping with the stress of being married to someone mediocre. Mediocre. The same word they probably used to describe me. That's why they lost the house, Marianne continued. Not just because you stopped helping, but because Jennifer had been using the mortgage money to make minimum payments on the cards, juggling, stealing from one place to cover another. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I saw him in the park today trying to manipulate me, asking me for money, telling me you were a cruel mother who abandoned them, that you were to blame for everything. And I know that story because I was you 20 years ago. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw invisible scars. I saw wisdom bought with pain. I gave him $1,000, she confessed. I told him it was the last time, that he should never look for me again. But I know he'll be back because people like Brian and Jennifer don't change. They just change victims. She stood up, left a card on my table. If you need to talk, if you need confirmation that you did the right thing, call me. She left. And I was left with the truth. A truth I didn't ask for but needed. My money never went to the kids. It was never for necessities. It was to feed Jennifer's addiction. To support a lie, to finance an illusion. And Brian allowed it. He enabled it. He used me as the solution. That night, I wrote in a notebook something I hadn't done since I was young. I wrote everything, the anger, the pain, the release, and at the end, I wrote something that surprised me. I forgive them. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. April came with rain. That soft rain that washes the streets and leaves everything smelling new. I continued my life, quiet, firm. But something had changed after Marianne's visit. It wasn't anger. It was final clarity. Like when you finish a puzzle and see the whole picture for the first time. My son wasn't a victim. He was an accomplice. That truth hurt more than any insult. Because it's one thing to be used. It's another to realize they always knew they were using you. And they allowed it. They enabled it. They enjoyed it. One morning while drinking coffee, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, but something told me to answer. Mrs. Mendoza. It was a man's voice. Professional. Serious. Yes, this is she. This is Julian Torres. I'm an attorney. I represent City Central Bank in the foreclosure case for the property on Maple Drive. You are listed as a co-borrower. My heart sped up slightly. I know. They called me weeks ago. I understand. I'm calling because there's new information I believe you should be aware of. Could we meet? It's important. What is it about? I'd prefer to speak in person. It's delicate. Something in his tone made me say yes. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next day. Neutral, public, safe. I didn't sleep well that night. Not from fear, from anticipation. Like when you know something big is about to be revealed, but you don't know if it's good or bad. I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early, ordered a tea, sat by the window, watched the street. People hurried by, everyone with somewhere to go, someone to see, something to do. I just had to listen. Julian arrived on time. Grey suit, discreet tie, leather briefcase. He looked like someone who knew secrets. A lot of secrets. Mrs. Mendoza, thank you for coming. He sat across from me, ordered a coffee, waited for the waitress to leave before speaking. I'll be direct. During the review process of the accounts related to the foreclosure, we found irregularities. What kind of irregularities? He pulled documents from his briefcase, put them on the table. When you co-signed 5 years ago, you also signed bank authorizations. Do you remember? Vaguely. I signed a lot of papers that day. One of those authorizations allowed your son and daughter-in-law to access information from your bank accounts for income verification purposes according to the contract. I nodded. I didn't like where this was going. The problem is they used that authorization for something else. Julian pointed to numbers on the documents. For the last 3 years, your son Brian has been checking your bank statements monthly, sometimes weekly. Checking them. Why? To know exactly how much money you had available. To calculate how much they could ask you for without leaving you completely broke. To maximize their extraction. The words landed like stones. Extraction. Like I was an oil well, a natural resource to be exploited. There's more. He turned over another document. 18 months ago when you sent $8,000 for the supposed down payment on the car, that money never went to the car. Where did it go? Directly to pay off Jennifer's credit card debts. The car was already paid for. It was used. Cost $20,000. They had $18,000 saved from one of Brian's bonuses. They only needed $2,000 more, but they asked you for $8,000. I couldn't breathe. And the other $6,000 disappeared into various purchases, restaurants, clothes, a weekend at a spa. You financed Jennifer's lifestyle without knowing it. I felt sick. Not with sadness, with rage. Pure crystalline rage. How did you get this information? I asked. I'm the bank's lawyer, but I'm also a father. And what I saw in these documents looked like financial abuse. So, I dug deeper than my job required because I wanted you to know the truth. Why? You don't know me. He looked down. My mother went through something similar with my brother. She died thinking she was a bad mother because she refused to keep giving him money. She never knew my brother had been systematically manipulating her. I regret not telling her. The silence between us was heavy, filled with similar stories of used mothers, of sons who forgot that love isn't a transaction. There's one more thing, he continued. Something you need to know before you make any decisions. What else could there be? He pulled out another document. This one older, wrinkled. When your son applied for the mortgage, he had to declare his income and expenses. In the family support section, he declared that you sent him $600 a month. That improved his income profile. It allowed him to qualify for a larger loan. They used my generosity as a tool to get into more debt. Exactly. And when you stopped sending money, they didn't just lose your support. They lost the money the bank expected to keep flowing. That's why they defaulted so quickly. So, they never really had the ability to pay for that house. No, they built their life on the assumption that you would keep paying forever. Forever. As if I were eternal. As if my life didn't matter. As if I existed only to support them. What are my options? I asked. Legally, as a co-borrower, you are responsible for the debt. But given that there is evidence of financial manipulation and unauthorized access to confidential information, we could argue fraud. We could petition to have your name removed from the contract and then they would remain fully responsible for the total debt. The bank would execute the foreclosure. They would lose any equity they might have built and their credit would be destroyed for years. And my credit, if we win the case, it would be clean as if you were never part of it. I looked out the window. The rain had started again. Drops running down the glass like tears that weren't mine. What do you recommend? I asked. Julian leaned back in his chair. I can't make that decision for you. But I can tell you this. You have a right to protect yourself. You have a right to not carry the consequences of other people's irresponsible decisions, even if those other people are your family. Family. That word that had been my chain for years. I want to proceed. I said. I want my name removed. I want to be free of this. He nodded. I'll start the process tomorrow. I'll need you to sign some documents and you'll need to prepare yourself. For what? For your son's reaction. When he finds out you're taking legal action against him, it won't be pleasant. I don't care about being pleasant anymore. I just want to be free. Julian smiled faintly. Those are the words of someone who has finally understood their worth. I left that coffee shop different than when I entered. Not lighter, stronger, because I finally had something I never had before. Information, power, agency. I wasn't a victim of circumstances. I was the architect of my own liberation. The following days were filled with paperwork, signatures, declarations. Julian was efficient, meticulous. Every document he showed me was another piece of evidence. Another proof that my son had used me in a calculated way. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't need. It was a system. A week later, Brian received the legal notice. Julian warned me the reaction would come, but nothing prepared me for the intensity. My phone exploded. 50 calls in 1 hour. Furious messages, insults, accusations. You're a traitor. You're destroying me. How could you do this to your own son? I hate you. I wish you had never been my mother. I read every message. Felt every word like a blow. But this time, I didn't bleed. This time I had armor. Because I had finally understood something fundamental. True love doesn't destroy. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't extract. And what I'd had with my son wasn't love. It was toxic dependency. It was exploitation disguised as filial duty. Jennifer wrote too, but her message was different, more calculated. Victoria, I know you're angry, but think about the children. If you do this, they will grow up knowing their grandmother destroyed their family. Is that what you want? To be remembered as the villain? The villain. Interesting how in their narrative, I was the bad guy. Not them for lying. Not them for stealing. Not them for using me. Me for defending myself. I replied only once to Jennifer. Brief. Direct. The children deserve to know the truth. And when they're older, I'll be here to tell them, but you won't be in that conversation. I blocked both numbers because I had learned that you can't reason with people who see you as a resource. You can only walk away and build high walls, walls with doors. But doors that only I control. May brought sunshine. The kind of sun that warms without burning. That invites you to go out, to live. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to live, not just survive, not just exist, truly live. The legal process moved forward. Julian kept me informed. Every update was another step toward freedom, but it was also another step toward the inevitable. The final confrontation. Brian requested a meeting through his own lawyer. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted me to drop the lawsuit in exchange for what? They didn't specify. But I knew in exchange for nothing. They just wanted me to go back to being the old Victoria. The one who gave in, the one who forgave. The one who paid. I agreed to the meeting. But not for them. For me, because I needed to look them in the eyes one last time. I needed to say things I had kept inside for years. I needed to close that door with my own hands. The meeting was in Julian's office. Neutral, professional, with witnesses. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in my best clothes, not expensive clothes, but they were mine. Bought with my money, earned with my effort, and that made me feel powerful. Brian arrived with Jennifer. They looked tired, defeated, but also furious like cornered animals. We sat on opposite sides of a large table. Julian at my right, their lawyer at their left. Like a miniature Cold War, Brian's lawyer spoke first. His name was Mr. Harrison. Deep voice, expensive suit. Mrs. Mendoza, we're here to find a solution that benefits everyone, especially the children. The children again, their favorite human shield. Julian interrupted before we talk about solutions. Let's establish the facts. Your client used my client's confidential financial information without her explicit consent. Your client lied about the destination of requested funds. Your client built a debt based on income that was not his. Those are the facts. Mr. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. Those are interpretations. My client acted in good faith. He believed he had implicit authorization. There is no such thing as implicit authorization in bank contracts, Julian replied. There are only signed documents, and the documents show abuse. Jennifer leaned forward. Her voice trembled, but not with sadness, with contained rage. This is ridiculous. Victoria, you're his mother. Mothers are supposed to help their children, not sue them. I stayed silent, breathing in control. Brian spoke. His voice was different, sober, calculated. Mom, I know things got out of control. I know we made mistakes, but this is too much. You're destroying your own family. My family, I repeated. My voice was calm, cold. Where was my family on Christmas? Where was my family when you called me a loser? Where was my family every time you needed money but never time with me? That was a mistake. I already told you. A mistake that cost $36,000 in direct transfers. $8,000 in a phantom car payment. Countless emergencies that were never emergencies. It wasn't a mistake, Brian. It was a system. That's not true. You're misinterpreting everything. Julian placed documents on the table. Bank statements, emails, bank access logs. It's all here in black and white. There's no misinterpretation possible. Mr. Harrison looked at the documents. His expression changed. I saw the exact moment he realized his case was weak. Very weak. Jennifer slammed the table. This is a trap. You brought us here to humiliate us. No, I said. I brought you here to listen to something I need to say so I can move on. The room went silent. Everyone looked at me, waiting. For 64 years, I lived for other people. First for my parents, then for you, Brian. I always thought that was love. I thought sacrificing myself would make me loved, needed, important. I was wrong. Mom, no. Let me finish. My voice was firm. Not aggressive, just firm. True love doesn't empty you. It doesn't exploit. It doesn't lie. And what you two gave me wasn't love. It was convenience. I was useful. And when I stopped being useful, I was disposable. That's not true. We love you. Do you love me or do you love what I can give you? Because when I had nothing left to give, suddenly I wasn't even welcome on Christmas. Brian looked down. Jennifer crossed her arms. No one answered because there was no answer. There was only truth, and the truth hurt. I am moving forward with the legal process, I continued, not for revenge, but for protection, because I finally understand that I cannot save you from the consequences of your own decisions. And I shouldn't try. And us, Brian asked. What are we supposed to do? What all adults do. Fix your own problems without using other people as the solution. You're leaving us with nothing. You left yourselves with nothing. I just stopped being the bandage hiding the wound. Jennifer stood up, her eyes shining with tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. You're a selfish, bitter old woman. I wish Brian had never met you. Me, too, I replied. Because maybe then he would have learned to stand on his own 2 feet. They stormed out, slamming doors, leaving poison in the air. Julian waited until their footsteps faded. You did very well, he said. I know that wasn't easy. It wasn't, but it was necessary. How do you feel? I thought about the question. Honestly, like I finally stopped carrying something that was never mine to carry. Like I finally set boundaries I should have set decades ago. It feels like freedom. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried. Not for Brian, not for what I lost, but for all the time I wasted thinking love was bought with sacrifice. I cried for the woman I was, the one who believed emptying herself would make her whole. And I cried tears of relief because finally that woman was dead. And in her place, someone new had been born, someone who knew her worth. June arrived with warmth. The legal process concluded. The judge reviewed the evidence, heard the arguments, and made a decision. My name was removed from the mortgage. The debt was left entirely in the hands of Brian and Jennifer. My credit was cleared. I was free legally, financially, emotionally. Julian called to give me the news. Congratulations, Victoria. You won. Won. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. That afternoon, I walked in the park, the same one where I had seen Brian months before. But now it was different. The trees were green, the flowers were blooming, children were playing, life was going on, and I was part of that life, not as a shadow, as a real person. I sat on a bench, closed my eyes, felt the sun on my face, and for the first time in years, I smiled. A real smile, not forced. Not to please anyone, just mine. I heard footsteps. Opened my eyes. It was Marianne, the neighbor who had told me the truth about Jennifer. "Victoria," she said. "May I sit?" I nodded. She sat next to me in a comfortable, shared silence. "I heard the process is over. That you won. How did you know?" "It's a small neighborhood. People talk." I smiled slightly. "I guess so. How do you feel?" "Free, scared, relieved, all at the same time." She nodded. "I understand. When I got free of my situation, I felt the same, like I had jumped out of a plane, terrified, but flying. Exactly like that." We sat in silence for a while, watching life go by. And I realized something. I wasn't alone. There were other women who had walked this path, who had survived, who had flourished, and if they could, I could too. Marianne spoke again. "Do you know what the hardest part is after?" "What?" "Forgiving yourself for all the time you let pass. For all the signs you ignored, for being so strong and yet so blind at the same time." Her words hit me because she was right. I was angry with Brian, with Jennifer, but I was angriest with myself. How did you get over it? By understanding that I did the best I could with the tools I had. I didn't know how to set boundaries because no one taught me. I didn't know how to say no because I was taught that love meant saying yes. I wasn't weak. I was conditioned. Conditioned. That word resonated because it was true. I wasn't born an ATM. I was made into one little by little, year after year. But now I could unmake myself, little by little, day by day. "Thank you," I told Marianne, "for telling me the truth, for not letting me be alone in this. We all need someone to tell us we're not crazy, that our pain is real, that our boundaries are valid." She stood up, gave me a hug, brief but sincere. "If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me." She left and I stayed there processing, healing, growing. July brought summer storms, fast, intense. They cleared the air and left everything fresh. That's how I felt, like after a storm. Clean, new, albeit with some scars that still ached when I touched them. It had been almost 2 months since the legal resolution. 2 months of absolute silence from Brian and Jennifer. No calls, no messages, nothing. And that silence was their final form of punishment. They wanted me to feel guilty, to regret it, to come crawling back, but I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. One morning, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a letter handwritten. In a child's handwriting, my heart sped up. "Dear Grandma, I miss you. Mommy says you're mad at us. Is it true? I didn't do anything wrong. I just want to see you. I love you, Cameron." Cameron, my oldest grandson, 8 years old. My son's eyes, but his own smile. The letter trembled in my hands. Because this was different. This wasn't manipulation from adults. This was the real pain of a child who didn't understand why his grandmother had disappeared. I cried. But I didn't change my mind because I knew exactly what had happened. Jennifer or Brian had dictated that letter, or worse, told him to write it. Using the child's innocence as their last weapon. And it was effective, very effective. I put the letter in a drawer. I would read it when I was stronger. When I could look at it without feeling my heart break all over again. That afternoon, I went to work, Mrs. Castellano's house. She noticed my expression immediately. What happened? I told her about the letter, about Cameron, about how an innocent child's pain was being used as a tool. She listened in silence. Then she said something that changed my perspective. "Children are resilient, Victoria, more than we think. What they don't survive is constant toxicity. If you stay firm now, if you let Brian and Jennifer face the consequences, you're teaching that boy something important." "What?" That adults are responsible for their actions. That you can't manipulate people without consequences. That love has boundaries. Those are lessons that will protect him his whole life. What if he hates me? Then it will be because he was taught to hate you, not because you did something wrong. And one day, when he's an adult, he can seek out the truth. And the truth will absolve you. Her words gave me strength because she was right. I wasn't fighting an 8-year-old. I was setting boundaries with adults who were using that child as a shield. That night, I wrote a letter to Cameron, but I didn't send it. I saved it for the future. For when he was old enough to understand, "Dear Cameron, when you read this, you'll be an adult. And I want you to know the truth. Not your father's version, not your mother's version, my version. The truth is, I love you. I always loved you. But loving someone doesn't mean you let them destroy you. It doesn't mean you become the solution to problems other people created. One day, you'll understand that saying no isn't abandonment. It's protection. And I hope when that day comes, you can forgive me, or at least understand me with love, Grandma Victoria." I put the letter away with all the documents, the transfers, the emails, the complete evidence so he could see it, so he could decide for himself. August brought calm. I kept working, saving, living, but something was changing in me. Not just emotionally, physically. I looked different in the mirror, more rested, less tense, like my muscles had finally stopped bracing for the next blow. One day while shopping at the market, I saw someone familiar. It was Jennifer, alone, looking at something in the discount aisle. She looked different, thinner, no makeup, simple, normal clothes. Our eyes met for a second. I thought she would approach me, that she would yell, that she would make a scene. But she did none of that. She just looked at me with something in her eyes I couldn't identify. Shame, anger, exhaustion. Then she looked away, grabbed what she needed, and left. And I stood there processing. That encounter told me more than 1,000 words. It told me they were still struggling. That the consequences were real. That life without my money was hard. But it also told me something more important. They were still alive. They were still functioning. They hadn't completely fallen apart as Brian threatened they would. They had survived. They were learning. And that, in a weird way, gave me peace because it meant I wasn't indispensable. It meant they could live without me. Maybe not how they wanted, but they could. September brought unexpected changes. Julian called me. He had news. Brian had filed for personal bankruptcy. He was in the process of reorganizing his debts. He would lose everything. The house was already foreclosed. The car had already been repossessed. They were living in a small apartment, 3 bedrooms, cheap rent, exactly like me. The irony did not escape me. My son finally understood what my life was like. The life he had despised. The life of losers, as he called it. "How do you feel about that?" Julian asked. "I don't know. It's not satisfaction. It's not sadness. It's somewhere in between. I understand. I also want you to know something else. During the bankruptcy process, Jennifer filed for divorce." Divorce. Yes. Apparently, when the money ran out, so did the love. She took the kids, moved back in with her mother in another state. Brian is alone. The words hung in the air. Alone like I had been. Like he had left me on Christmas. The difference was, I chose my solitude. He didn't choose his. It was a consequence. Did he expect me to feel pity? Maybe. Did I? A little, but not enough to break my boundaries. "Thank you for letting me know," I told Julian. "I appreciate everything you did for me. It was a pleasure. And Victoria, for what it's worth, I think you're very brave." I hung up and I thought about that word brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. But maybe that's what bravery was. Moving forward, even when you're tired. October brought colors. The leaves were changing. Red, orange, yellow, everything was dying in order to be reborn. And I felt like I was in that process, too. Letting old versions of myself die, preparing to be reborn. One afternoon, while I was reading in my apartment, someone knocked on the door softly, timidly, not aggressively. I looked through the peephole. It was Brian alone. No Jennifer, no visible anger in his expression. Just exhaustion. I didn't open it right away. I stood there watching him through the small glass, seeing my son turned into a stranger. "Mom," he said. His voice was different. Broken. "I know you're in there. I'm not here to ask for money. I just want to talk. 5 minutes, please." Something in his tone made me hesitate. I opened the door, but only a little. With the chain still on, like you open it for a stranger. "What do you want?" "I just want to say something. Something I should have said months ago." "I'm listening." He took a deep breath. "You were right about everything. I was an idiot, a manipulator, a bad son, and I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I destroyed something I can't fix, but I needed you to know." I stayed silent, looking for the lies in his words. Looking for the manipulation, but I only saw exhaustion, defeat, truth. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I lost everything. My house, my wife, my kids, my dignity. And in the middle of all of it, I realized the only real thing I ever had was your love. And I destroyed it for money, for pride, for stupidity." Tears were streaming down his face. They weren't tears of manipulation. They were tears of real regret. Raw. Painful. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally get it. Too late, but I get it." He turned around, started walking toward the stairs. "Brian," I called. He stopped, turned back. Hopeful. "Thank you for coming, for saying that. Does that mean anything? Does it mean there's a chance?" "No," I interrupted. "It doesn't mean we go back to how it was. That's dead. But it means I heard you and that maybe with a lot of time and a lot of work, you could rebuild something. Not with me, with yourself." He nodded. "I understand. And Brian?" "Yeah, the kids. Make sure they know I love them. That this was never about them. It was about boundaries, about respect, about dignity. I'll tell them." He left. And I closed the door. This time, no tears, no trembling in my hands, just the feeling that something had ended. Not fixed, ended. And sometimes an ending is enough. November came with a familiar cold. The kind of cold that announces the year is ending. That cycles are closing. That everything that began eventually finds its end. I had changed. Not in an obvious way. It wasn't a dramatic movie transformation. It was something subtler, deeper. I had learned to listen to my own voice. That voice that for years had been drowned out by the needs of others, by expectations, by guilt. Now that voice was clear, and it said simple but powerful things. You matter. Your needs are valid. Saying no is okay. One morning, drinking coffee by the window, I saw the first snow of the season. Soft flakes falling silently, covering everything in a clean white, like the world was giving itself another chance, like it was saying, what happened happened, but today is new. My phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, but I answered. Sometimes you have to answer to know what's next. Mrs. Mendoza. It was a woman's voice. Young professional. Yes, this is she. My name is Adriana. I'm a social worker with the Family Services Center. I'm calling because your name appeared as an emergency contact on the file for your grandchildren, Cameron and Isabel. My heart stopped. Did something happen to them? No. The children are physically fine, but there's a situation we need to discuss. Could you come to our office tomorrow? I agreed without thinking because even though I had set boundaries with Brian and Jennifer, the kids were different. They didn't choose this situation. They were victims just like me. The next day, I arrived at the office. A grey functional building filled with broken families trying to rebuild. Adriana greeted me. She was young, maybe 30, kind eyes, but tired. The kind of tired you get from seeing too much pain. I sat across from her desk. She opened a file. Mrs. Mendoza, the children have been living with their mother, Jennifer, and their maternal grandmother for 3 months. However, there have been incidents, volatile arguments, emotional instability. The maternal grandmother has health problems and can't properly care for them. And the father, Brian, petitioned for shared custody, but was temporarily denied. He lives in a small studio apartment, works double shifts. He has no stability for children. He's still in financial recovery. So, why are you calling me? Because Jennifer mentioned that you could be a temporary option while she gets her situation sorted out. 3 months, maybe 6, just until she can find her own place and get stable. I leaned back in the chair, processing. This was exactly what I had feared. That they would eventually need me again. That they would come back, not with love, with need. And if I say no, I asked. Adriana sighed. The children would likely enter the foster care system, a temporary home, separated from their mother, from their father, from everything they know. Guilt started to climb up my throat. That familiar feeling, that weight. But this time, I recognized it and I stopped it. I need to think about it, I said. I need time. I understand. But Mrs. Mendoza, these children need stability. And according to all reports, you are the only person in this family who has it. I left that office shaking, not from fear, from rage, because once again, I was being put in the position of savior. Once again, my stability built with so much effort was being asked for as a sacrifice. I called Marianne. I needed to talk to someone who understood. We met at a coffee shop. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something I didn't expect. What do you want to do? Not as a grandmother, not as Brian's ex-victim, as Victoria. What does Victoria want? I thought about the question honestly deeply. I want to help the children, but I don't want to be used again. I don't want this to become another form of manipulation. Then set terms. Marianne said, if you're going to do this, do it on your terms, not theirs. How? Legal temporary custody documented with clear boundaries. No Jennifer or Brian living with you. No extra money for them. Only for the kids, supervised visits, mandatory family therapy, everything legal, everything clear. Can I do that? You can ask for whatever you want. And if they don't accept, then your answer is no. Simple. Her words gave me clarity because she was right. I could help, but I didn't have to destroy myself doing it. That night, I wrote a list, my terms, my conditions, my boundaries, and they were firm, non-negotiable. The next day, I called Adriana. I explained my position. She listened, took notes, and said something that surprised me. Those are very reasonable terms, Mrs. Mendoza. In fact, they are exactly the kind of structure these children need. 2 weeks later, everything was legally arranged. Cameron and Isabel would come live with me for 6 months. Documented temporary custody. Jennifer and Brian would have supervised visits every 2 weeks, mandatory family therapy for everyone, and I would receive state support for the children's expenses. I would not be using my money to clean up someone else's mess. The day they arrived was strange, exciting, and terrifying at the same time. Cameron came in first, timid, unsure, looking around my small apartment like it was unknown territory. "Grandma," he said softly, "can we really stay?" "Yes, my love." For a while. Isabel, who was 5, ran to me. She hugged me tightly. "I missed you so, so much." And in that hug, I felt something break and heal at the same time because this was different. This wasn't for Brian. It wasn't for Jennifer. It was for them. For 2 children who didn't ask to be in the middle of broken adults, the first few days were hard. Cameron asked a lot of questions. Why don't we live with Mom? Why doesn't Dad come over? Did we do something wrong? And I answered him with age-appropriate truth. Adults make mistakes sometimes. And when that happens, everyone needs time to fix things. But none of this is your fault. None of it. Slowly, we created a routine. Breakfast together, school, homework, dinner, stories before bed. Small things, simple but filled with stability. The kind of stability they hadn't had in months. One night, while reading them a story, Cameron asked something that broke me. "Grandma, why aren't Mom and Dad like you?" "What do you mean, sweetie? You don't yell. You don't fight. You don't say mean things." "They always do." I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Some people didn't learn how to handle their problems in a healthy way. And when you don't know how, you hurt other people without meaning to. Sometimes even the people you love. Do they love us in their own way? Yes. But love isn't always enough if you don't know how to show it without causing harm. Isabel snuggled against me. I love you, Grandma, and you don't hurt me. Those words healed something in me I didn't know was broken because they showed me that it was all worth it. Every no I said, every boundary I set, every door I closed, it all led to this moment where I could give them what they needed most, not money, peace. December came again. A full year since that Christmas, since that closed door, since those words that changed everything. This time I decorated my apartment. Not with expensive things, with things the kids made. Drawings, paper ornaments, a small tree, but full of love. Jennifer and Brian came for their supervised Christmas visit. It was awkward, tense, but civil. The kids gave them handmade gifts. They brought toys, clumsy words of affection. When they were leaving, Brian stayed at the door for a moment. Thank you, Mom, for doing this, for being what we couldn't be. I'm not doing it for you, I replied. I'm doing it for them. I know. And still, thank you. He left, and I closed the door. But this time, not with anger, with peace, because I had finally found the balance. I could love my grandchildren without sacrificing myself. I could help without destroying myself. I could be a grandmother without being a victim. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat by the window. The snow was falling softly again, exactly as it had 1 year ago. But I was different. I was no longer the woman who rang that doorbell with gifts and hope. I was no longer the woman who accepted crumbs and called it love. I was no longer the woman who emptied herself to fill others. I was Victoria, just Victoria with boundaries, with dignity, with peace. And as I watched the snow fall silently, I understood one final thing. Maybe the real revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's rebuilding yourself. It's finding peace while they find consequences. It's living well while they learn. Maybe losers are just people who stopped paying for everyone else's mistakes. And if that made me a loser, then I would lose with pride. Because I had finally won something far more valuable than their approval. I had won myself back. The snow fell peacefully that night, and so did I.